Here are the instructions for Chunk 3 of the Vernon Hills Growth and Measurement Pilot. You received the Chunk 3 handout at the November 13th meeting. The focus of this time around is going to really be on first the informal observation and the form specific to the informal observation that's included in Chunk 3. And then after that, secondary to that would be looking at the other information that we've included in Chunk 3. So you have the language that creates the processes, and then after the informal observation form, there is the summative form. And so what we're going to be looking for feedback on when we get back together in December, and also through Al's form, is going to be feedback on the informal observation, the language that outlines the processes of the new growth and measurement plan, and then specifically the summative form and the rating definition. I guess it's a rubric that you will see. So let me just show you a few of these and where you're going to be finding them. So in this chunk, you have I've given you everything that we've used so far and everything that will be new. So if you skip down past the pre-conference, post-conference that we used in the last chunk. Here's the pre-observation form, and then you have the post-ob. And then after that, you're going to have this brief informal observation feedback. And so what we're asking you to do between now and our December 11th meeting is to conduct an informal observation, meaning that there's no pre-conference. There doesn't necessarily have to be a post-conference, but there can be. And this is the form that the supervisor would use to give some just real quick and basic feedback. And you see the things that we're looking for here are what is the teacher doing when you visit? What are the students doing when you visit? This section may or may not be filled in, and that's something that we'll talk quite a bit about when we review this form. How does this apply to your design question / goal? It may not, especially if you do this as a walk-in or a walkthrough, and you're there for a brief period of time. You may not see something that is relevant to the goal that the teacher has, but that's okay, because you'll surely then be gaining or gathering evidence on another design question and some other element that can be applied to the overall rating of that teacher. Then the last section on here is what I was wondering about, so maybe questions that you have or things that you wanted to talk about. Again, these last two sections aren't necessarily things that you would need to fill in. So this is really the focus of what you're going to do with the supervisor and teacher as a part of this chunk of the pilot. Then what we'd ask you to do is to spend some time looking through that first section of Chunk 3. Much of this you've already had, but this will walk you through. So if you look at the table of contents, we're talking really kind of this philosophy through the process timeline, and those sections will outline the process that we go through. And so we would like some feedback on how that's worded, what that looks like, how that plays out in terms of what you're used to, or what that's going to look like here in a year when we implement this model. And then the last thing that we'd like you to do as a part of this chunk is to look at, and this comes after the informal observation, is to look at the summative form. And so this is the summative form. You have the space where your rating would be checked. You have a very quick summary of what those definitions are, but I'll show you that there's some place you can look for a little bit more specific outline of what these mean. And then you have those kind of open-ended, evidence-based summaries of the goal, domain 1, domain 2, domain 3, and domain 4, and then the conclusion, similar to what we've, so kind of the summary. And then you have this area for the goals for the next cycle, similar to what we have now, signatures. So we'd like some feedback on that form. We do not expect you or even want you to go through the process of filling this out, as we are not conducting a summative, but really just looking at the usefulness of this form. And then this section, which will be a lot easier for you to see on the paper copy that you have so you can turn it, but this is what you will use, what will be used to determine those ratings. So in a lot of the Marzano material, you've seen in the scales, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And you'll see as you look in here, we do not have any kind of mathematical formula. We are not using those numbers, but rather we are using the focus of growth. And so you can look at this rubric to get a sense as to what would classify, or what would place a teacher in that excellent category, the proficient category, needs improvement, or unsatisfactory. So what we're looking at, the four things that we're looking for feedback on going into December, and that would be reflected on Al's form and also going into the meeting on December 11th, are the informal observation. So let's see if I can jump to that real fast here. The informal observation, So the informal observation and form, and then the processes. So that first section of Chunk 3, after the table of contents, kind of the steps that you go through to conduct a cycle of evaluation. And then the two elements of the summative, which would be the form itself, and also then the rubric that you would use to determine a teacher's rating, or what that would be used to determine a teacher's rating. I want to keep this to under 7 minutes and 30 seconds, so I'm going to end this now. If you have questions, please stop by, or you can email me, and I'd be happy to come and meet with you. One goal that we have, and you'll see this in the follow-up email that we will send after the pilot meeting, is we're going to schedule some interim time during 6th period for groups of people to get together to discuss parts of this, just to add a little bit of discussion on a volunteer basis. So we'll make some time available during 6th period to come down and talk about some of this Chunk 3 material with colleagues, with other people that are looking at it, so that you're not just looking at this in isolation. And now I'm trying to keep it to under 8 minutes. All right, thanks. If you have any questions, please do stop by or shoot an email.